For the longest time, I've wanted to make a Bowie. I've also wanted to try feather Damascus, so I figured I'd kill two birds with one stone and try them both. The pattern didn't turn out quite the way I wanted, but I really like the way this Bowie turned out. So, here's the process that I went through in order to make this knife. I hope you enjoy. Here I start with some 15N20 and 1084 steel. I clean it all off to get it ready to stack together and weld for the initial billet. After the billet is in the forge and up to temperature, I use my squaring dies on my forge press to draw the billet out to the length that I need. Once the billet is square, I then crush the corners in and begin forging on the bias to create what's called crushed C's. After forging the crushed C's, it's time to cut the bar in equal pieces, clean the faces, and restack the steel. Now that the steel has been restacked, the crushed C's will now form what's called crushed W's. This is where the pattern really begins to take. Once again, I'm going to cut the bar into equal pieces, clean the faces, restack again, and throw it in the forge. Rinse and repeat. Now that I have multiple layers of crushed W's, I need to restack with smaller pieces of steel. From there, I'll forge weld them together, cut them down the middle to start forming that feather pattern. Now this is where everything starts to go downhill. When I made this cutter for my forge press, I thought it was H13 steel, which is a good steel to use at high temperatures. Well, it wasn't. Not only did the cutting edge deform, but the whole thing bent on me, making a very uneven cut. Instead of giving up, I forged on, hoping to be able to salvage this billet of Damascus. Now I have this chunk of steel that I have to try to forge weld back together. I clean up the face, and I'm really at this point just hoping for the best. I begin forge welding these pieces back together. I'm very gentle with the forging because I know that there's a lot of stress on these welds. Fortunately, it seems like these forge welds are actually going to take. Even with being very careful, I started to see some separation. Before going any further, I grind these parts out and continue to draw out the billet. Once I have the tang of the knife roughed in, I move over to the anvil and start to shape the blade by hand. I do this by hand just because it's a lot more gentle on these forge welds, and they're already pretty fragile as is, so I just want to take it nice and slow by working with the hammer and by hand. Some more welds begin to open, so I stop forging and decide to use the grinder from here on out. Now that the bevels are roughed in, I get ready for heat treating the blade. Before I do, I run the blade through 3 normalizing cycles in order to refine the grain structure within the steel. Then it's time for the heat treat. At this point, I had forgotten I was filming the process of making this knife. I totally forgot to film myself forging the guard of the blade. I took a scrap piece of steel from the original billet, shaped it on the anvil, and filed the slot and filled the tang. I'm new to this whole filming thing, so cut me some slack. I had the guard finished to a 400 grit hand sand, so I added some refractory to prevent the scale buildup during heat treat. I needed to heat treat this guard because the Damascus shows up a lot better with hardened steel, so I wanted to make sure I got this guard nice and hard in order to show that pattern. After a light coat of wax on the handle and blade, this knife's all finished up. I hope you enjoy seeing the process I went through. This was a difficult build, but it was very fun. I hope to make some more videos in the future, and I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.